Hello, everyone. It's Sheila Kamara-Hay of Ecstatic Birth, and I'm having a conversation today with Debra Pascali-Bonaro of Orgasmic Birth. Hi, Debra.
Hello, Sheila. It's always such a pleasure to be with you, and so much fun that we're learning how to do multiple technology together.
This
Like
is
lots of multiple pleasure.
we're having we're having multiple spots of pleasure today.
Yeah,
So I'm really excited for this conversation because I'm hearing an echo. Do you hear that?
I do. Do you have your volume off on your phone?
The volume is off on my phone. I'm wondering if it's Bear with us, people. I'm wondering if it's the Facebook.
The Facebook feed?
Yeah, hang on 1 second. We are gonna. No, it is definitely coming from the phone. Let's see if I can turn it even further down.
Yeah, I think I had to turn my volume all the way down. So it was off on my phone, and that way my volume's just up on the computer.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's still going. I don't know. Is it horrible? It is kind of annoying, huh?
And it's more for you because I hear it a bit, but I'm sure when you're hearing it right there, it's I only hear a little bit of it.
Okay. Well, it's low. If it's not annoying for you, if you can just hear it, I would say let's just go with it because
Okay.
as far down as it can go. And we've got a bunch of people that have joined us on both platforms. So welcome again. So we're here to talk about really like in this time when everything's all about survival, like how do you thrive? And what gives us the right to even talk about this? Well, we were just chatting. We're talking about how in birth, in childbirth, so many times the bar is low. The bar is like, how can I get through this? How can I survive this? How can I, avoid all of the intensity and come out on the other side and, just have the prize, which is the baby. But in the work that Debra and I do, we're really talking about not just how do you survive, but how do you really thrive? How do you enjoy the experience of labor and delivery? And now Debra, I'm excited to announce, has a new book out, and it's all about how do you enjoy the postpartum period, which we know like those first few weeks can be so overwhelming that sometimes we do just want to get by, but there's also like a deliciousness to it that really allows you to sink in and enjoy. So Debra, welcome again. I'm so happy to have you here to talk about all of this.
Thank you, Sheila. Such a pleasure. And it's been such an incredible journey, right? We've each done our own and then together. And for me, as you said, creating orgasmic birth. And like it's amazing to think about, but like that dream of literally creating orgasmic birth is 15 years ago. And so as I began that journey to really explore birth connected to our sensuality and sexuality and all that's possible in so many ways. It's been such a great opportunity to talk with people all over the world, learn from so many who have mentored me, and we have some similar people that and each other. I learn from you all the time. And so it's been a really natural continuum now to the new book, The Ultimate Guide to Sex After Baby, because birth really does set us up for this opportunity to expand and open into our fullest sense of who we are, to really go deeper into our sexuality and to find our power. And when we take that and harness it into postpartum, what's possible, right, is incredible in our relationships, in our bodies, in our life, in our parenting, in every aspect of us. But too often, as we know, things don't go that way, and people are put down in birth and don't have the knowledge. We often don't know what we don't know, and fear immobilizes us. And then sadly, as you know well, into the postpartum, we struggle with disconnect to ourselves and then to our relationships. So it's been such a great journey to see how it all comes together. And collectively, we have so much wisdom that we've gathered that's so helpful to share.
Yeah, I think the one thing that you said that really like jumped out at me, and it's also important, but you talked about like reclaiming our power, right? And the work that we're doing, which is bridging sexuality into these realms that sexuality really hasn't been included in for too long. And yet, it's almost once we start to reclaim that, there's a naturalness to it and an opening to power and pleasure, right? So how do we start that conversation with people that are not not in it already, who for the idea of like, oh, I just have a baby, I don't even want to think about sex, or what are you talking about sexuality and birth? How do you begin that conversation?
Yeah, and I think it begins with sexuality and birth, right? And you're right. Like when we put orgasmic and birth together as two words, for a lot of people, that's like, wow, let's put them apart, you know? But I, like you, feel that when we sterilized birth, when we stripped away the wholeness and the sexuality away from it, that's where we ended up with a lot of problems. And science is even supporting now, basically, that a scientific birth, that's the best research and evidence, to me, is a sexy birth, as we're learning that the hormones that are necessary for mother baby to be producing and birth the baby in the safest, gentlest way are the same hormones that we release in our sexuality, right? So, like, it just makes sense. Like, our hormones don't say, okay, in this one environment, I need privacy to feel safe, to feel respected, to feel honored. But in birth, invite three strangers into the room, ask me questions, put me under bright lights,
Yeah.
and have me in positions that don't even feel safe and comfortable. And I'm still going to release hormones. So, we've been sold like a false bill of rights really in childbirth, and I think that we have to start looking at birth from the outside in with this new lens. And once you see it, it's like you can't unsee something. Once you can make the connection to sexuality and birth and look through this new lens, it's a whole new world of what you're going to want in your birth, where your birth, with whom, how, and the different things that you'll desire. So I think that's where we have to start, because when we start in the postpartum, if you're the fortunate ones that have a powerful birth, you're set on a good path. For everybody else, we're beginning with healing. And anyone can heal. I don't want anyone to feel they can't. And I think it's important that we all, especially in this time, as you said, probably have multiple elements of healing that are healthy to do. But the more we can do in prevention and setting ourselves up for the most power and pleasure, I think that's the best place to start. But wherever you are, there's always the opportunity to move to pleasure.
Oh, I love when I hear you say that science really supports this. That science really supports the integration of sexuality in birth. And of course, it's like, duh, how else does the baby get in there, right? But science is showing that that actually leads to better outcomes. So I feel like from that place of saying, okay, well, now this is like evidence based, this is research backed, this is actually contributing to your safety, then we can talk about like, okay, this idea that like, oh, it's indulgent to thrive in birth, it's indulgent to thrive during a pandemic, it's indulgent to thrive in all these ways, is actually, it's a misnomer, because uh, that bar that you're setting to thrive actually addresses issues of survival. It actually addresses like, how can you have the best birth experience possible, the safest birth experience possible? How can you enjoy your postpartum time, right? How can you enjoy those delicious early days with your baby? How can you enjoy yourself when you're stuck in quarantine, right? In the midst of a pandemic, when you don't know whether to go out or to stay home, or how to, right, how to make your livelihood. So I love that you talk about, uh, like the research and the science really backs this. And that I think is a really powerful spot for people to start to dig into our work.
Oh, I agree. I think, as you said, like, I think we're somehow conditioned because we are in a pandemic that we have to give up something. And I want to say no when it comes to childbirth. And not only does the science support that having a birth that we feel safe and respected and turned on and pleasure and love all need to be part of it. But when we look from a human rights lens, the rights violations that are going on right now, why are people being stripped of their dignity and respect at a time that they're bringing new life into the world? So this is a time that, even though we have stress, and definitely we're identifying there are huge inequities right now that need to be addressed, but we do know that when you're in a stress mode, right, this is not a healthy place to be for your body or for your baby. And so addressing those stressors and finding those places of connection, those places of calm, love, and pleasure, that's how we're going to shift our hormones. And that's going to create a healthier space to grow a baby and a much healthier space to birth your baby in. So it is the time that we want to honor the challenges, but having a toolkit of pleasure is essential for everyone.
Yeah. And so let's really talk about that. Like, how do you reach for pleasure when you're stressed?
And I think that's unique for everyone, right? Everyone listening has to create their own pleasure kit or their pleasure tool chest. But everyone's different. I mean, for me, I've said this a lot. I love dance, put on some music. And I want to thank not only, all the people that are keeping us safe right now, who are so important, our essential workers and that, but certainly all the musicians that are turning up online. I have to say, I love it each day when I see them from home playing, and my husband laughs at me, but I'm like dancing around our kitchen and just taking those moments sometimes to just shake off the stress and move. So dance for me is a big one of my pleasures, that the more challenging the moment, the wilder I dance, right? Because I need to find that kind of place in me of just expressing everything. What would be your number one pleasure?
Okay, so my number one pleasure is always connecting to my body. That's where it all goes, right? Because I find that when I'm super stressed, what happens to me is it's almost like an out of body experience, right? When I'm stressed, my mind goes into like overdrive of like, okay, how can I fix this? How can I create this? How can I control this? And I think that's normal and natural for a lot of us to, react to stressors that way. We want to feel like we have a semblance of control. And so for me, when I realize that I'm in that mode, just stopping and taking some time to like sit, close my eyes, connect to my body, it almost feels like I'm collecting my energy from around me, right? Like it's all scattered and it's all over the place. So I collect it back to me. And from that place of like really deep body connection and sensation, I can open to waves of bliss. I can open to waves of ecstasy. I can open to waves of pleasure. So that's really, really nourishing for me. But that first step is always deep body connection. And sometimes in between that and the bliss and the ecstasy and the pleasure, sometimes there might be tears. Sometimes there might be rage. Sometimes it's really allowing that full range of emotion to flow. And when the emotions start to flow, then anything is possible. There's so much pleasure available to me in that deep body connection.
So important, right? And we each have different ways. I mean, I always say to everyone, as I know you do too, like we should have 3 to 5 pleasures every day. And so if that pleasure chest has 20 different pleasures that we enjoy, we have those rotating things. And some of them are just daily things, like you said, are kind of essentials of connecting to our body, our emotions, our spirit, every bit of ourselves. But I think that's something we're lacking. Like, have you ever, I often think about, like, why isn't this part of education? Could you imagine if every child in school had the opportunity to say we're going to really spend time every day on developing our toolkit for pleasure or happiness. And Yale University, right, has the first class on happiness, and it's become the most popular class ever. And that's good news and bad news. Great that people want to move into that happiness, pleasure space. So sad that we haven't developed that as just an aspect of who we are, that we need a university class for our young people.
Such a good point. And when you're talking about like, why haven't we been taught to develop our relationship to our pleasures to support ourselves? The first place my mind went was in like in trauma work now, right? In trauma work, there's a lot of talk about like resourcing, like finding your resources within your body. And I think it's really the same conversation. It's the same conversation about like, how do you have an optimal birth experience? Well, that's a bar that's, like let's just set the bar at optimal, but like we can set the bar at ecstatic and orgasmic, right? And same thing, it's like, well, yeah, we all experience stressors and we're all in a traumatic moment in time. We can resource, which is like comforting. That's the first step. And that's good. And then the next step is really like the pleasure, the bliss, the ecstasy, right? So I think it's really about like raising the bar for ourselves and also for our clients and communities.
Yeah, I agree. And talking about it, right? Even just talking about it today is raising the bar, because I hope all that are listening in, you're starting to think of your daily pleasures and what role does pleasure have in your life, especially in these stressful times. What are you each doing that moves you into that place of calm? I mean, we just know from a hormonal perspective, right? Fear and anxiety is the cortisol, the stress hormones, and they lead to dis-ease, right? They really in the body build up. And again, we have the science and the pleasure hormones, the oxytocin, the beta endorphins. They're going to lead to both pain relief and calm and connection and love and intimacy. So it's great to see the science. Like I have to say, 15 years ago, when we were starting this journey and ramping up the conversation, we didn't have all the science we have today that supports.
Yeah. And it's great to know that actually pleasure is immune boosting, right?
Yeah.
So it's especially good right now. And for me, one of the biggest journeys that I've taken has been a journey in connection to my own pleasure, an sensual expansion journey of really learning to feel my body, really learning to connect to the sensations and open to the sensations of pleasure and flow and ecstasy that are really always there for us, always there for us. So that's a really big part of all the work I do in all of my programs, and especially in the ecstatic birth practitioner training, which is coming up in June. And I know also you talk a lot about like sexuality and pleasure in your new course. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Deborah?
Sure. So, with the wonderful stories that have come with the book, I've started a new course, and I have to say it's been one of my newest pleasures is bringing together a community of women that want to go deeper, and often it is healing if birth hasn't been all that you thought it would be, and looking at all the different ways from our bodies to our communication to our parenting skills to really come together and find our creative energy and open up our sensuality and sexuality to new levels. So it's called our Sex After Baby Signature Course, and we're beginning June 1. I can't believe it's the middle of May already, thinking, boy, that's coming soon.
Yeah. So for those of you that are liking this conversation, that would like to raise that bar, right, from survival to really thriving, Deborah and I love to collaborate. So we're offering a bundle of both of our programs where you can get both for a little bit less than the price of one, and that's available today only. So if you register at ecstaticbirth.pro for the ecstatic birth practitioner training, I will also hook you up and Deborah will connect you with Sex After Baby. So you'll actually be getting both programs for a little bit less than the price of one, because we're in early registration period right now for the practitioner training. So it's a little bit discounted.
Yeah, and I hope people will really consider it, because what an opportunity to have the two courses come together. I think really And I think we need to say this, and I truly believe it, and I know you do too, that when you really take the time to invest in yourself, and I know right now it's a time a lot of people are nervous to put the personal investment in, but I would say this is the perfect time to invest in yourself, because when you really look at healing and expanding and getting really deep into your body and your sexuality is your creative energy. And too many people are blocked right now. Fear is holding us back, and we're building a new world. I think that this pandemic is doing many things that are tragic and really hard, but I do think it's an opportunity for us all to connect in new ways, that new opportunities are already manifesting to go forward, and that I find anybody that does this work, the opportunities that come for them in the future are huge. So it may not be like taking a business course, and yet people would think nothing right now, probably, of going back and taking a full course and paying if it was business. But I
Yeah.
think, especially as women, we have trouble understanding that investing in ourselves is an investment in our future, our parenting, our relationship, our family, the most important ways to birth forward new things.
So important. And I would say that there are really two ideal groups of people that this bundle is perfect for. First, if you're a birth worker and you support women in birth and in postpartum, this is a really unique opportunity to uplevel your skills in both of those areas. And as we know, the birth world is changing dramatically and hopefully holding space for the better. All those systems and structures that we've really been pushing against for a long time are now open and pliable, and we're already seeing, even though there are spots that are still really difficult and scary, but we're already starting to see dramatic shifts in the way birth is being handled, and we have an opportunity to create that future. So this bundle that Debra and I are offering today is a really powerful way to differentiate yourself and to create skills that will support you in this new birth and postpartum culture that we're creating. So that's one group of people that I can really see benefiting from this bundle. And the other is if you're a birth worker and also a new mom. And I know that there are a lot of birth workers who are, who might fall into that category. You really need to be, if you're a new mom, like, you really need to be nurturing yourself. And now is a time that you need to be nurturing yourself even more, really building your immunity, building your connection to your body, and fueling yourself with pleasure so that you can show up for your baby the way you want and you can show up for your clients the way you want. So that's the way I'm thinking about it. Is there anything that you would want to add to that, Deborah?
I think that's really true. And as I said, when you show up for yourself in these ways as a new parent, it's going to just pay out for years to come. I mean, one of the stories I share in my book is the reason I wrote this book is it's the book I wish I had when I was a new mom. And as we've said a lot, let's talk about what no one talks about. And so often we set on that journey as a new mother, as a new parent, and we don't have someone to guide us, and we think certain things are normal. And for me, it was like my partner and I set sail on ships, two separate ones, and somehow we anticipated that we would end up at the same destination. But without that communication and planning, our lives went like that. And so my first marriage and the father of my children, we ended up in divorce. I don't know that would have, what would have happened, right? You never know. But I know that we didn't have tools. We didn't have a way of maintaining that intimacy and connection and communication that was essential. And the divorce rate is so high right now in new parents, that I think this investing in yourself is investing in your relationship that is essential. And my second marriage, we did all these tools. We had the toolkit, we had the information, and blessed, to be many, many years now in a really good marriage. But I'd like everyone to have that opportunity to be in a circle and to share their challenges and joys, and have you and I to guide them and support them as they come to their own kit that will sustain them long beyond the new parenting.
Yeah, because what you and I are talking about, it's not like a magic pill, right? It's not something that you purchase, you put on, and you're done. We're talking about um, a practice. We're talking about like constantly coming back to a reorientation in your relationship with your body and your family and your clients. And it really begins with us. It really begins with our relationship with our body. And that's something that it takes time. It takes time and it takes a commitment and it takes a practice. And it does take a community, especially when you're living in a world that this isn't the status quo. It's not the status quo yet for for women to have ecstatic or orgasmic births. It's not the status quo yet for women to have like a healthy, thriving sexuality after giving birth, right? And I have to say, it's also not the status quo for most birth workers to have that relationship with their own body. And so, how are you guiding someone in what is the supreme sexual act in the birthing room when you don't really have that connection within your own body to your sexuality, to your ecstasy in a way that can nourish you and fuel you as well?
Yeah, such a good point, right?
Um,
Now, I don't know if like can people write questions to us?
so I don't see anything on Instagram, and I
Okay.
can take a peek on Facebook. Actually,
Yeah, anyone that's out there listening, we'd love to hear from you. It's always good to hear who you are, how you feel about pleasure, and um, what can we offer you. If there's even a question right now, we always love to take your questions as well.
I'm just scrolling through. We have a lot of waves and hearts. And
Someone saying yes on Instagram. People can. Thank you, Britt. So please, we see your comment, but if anyone else wants to share a comment, a question, looking at pleasure and sexuality in birth and postpartum, um, and I know some of you are jumping in and out, so you might not have heard the whole conversation. Hopefully, you'll go back and listen to some of it. But
yeah, so for those of you that are just jumping on, Deborah and I have been talking about how do you thrive? How do you like raise that bar in the birthing room and postpartum and even now during a pandemic? And we have shared an offer that you can get both of our programs, the Ecstatic Birth Practitioner Training and Sex After Baby, for less than the price of one. And that's available for today only, May 14th, by going to ecstaticbirth.pro and registering there. So I'll put links wherever I can put them and comments and wherever I can. And you can take a look at that and see if it's a good fit for you. Deborah, is there anything that you want to share before we jump off?
I would just say to everyone, wherever you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and in whatever way, I really do hope everyone every day finds 3 to 5 pleasures. I'd love to have you join us, and you'll know in your heart if the time is right to come into our programs and work with both of us intimately, and have that support and be part of a community. But if now's not the time, I hope you'll still make your pleasures a priority.
Yeah, I really love that idea of 3 to 5 pleasures. It's so simple and it could be like, a nice cup of tea on your porch. It could be dancing the way Deborah mentioned. Just find those places and just really take care of your body, right? Really, really take care of your body and nurture that connection. Oh, Britt says,
And I like that. Yes, advocates for pleasure. Definitely, we are pleasure advocates, both of us. That we have to add that, Sheila, to our.
I like that.
I like that a lot.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us here today. You can always find me at the handle Ecstatic Birth and Debra at the handle Orgasmic Birth, and the websites as well, ecstatic-birth.com for me and Orgasmic Birth for Debra to find out more about the work that we do. Debra, thank you for having this conversation with me. It's always so much fun to connect with you and chat with you.
Always a pleasure. And I look forward to our courses together. We're going to have lots of pleasures.
We've done this. This is the third year that we've bundled our courses together. And I have to say, the women that do it, they are amazing. amazing. It takes a special kind of woman to commit to her pleasure on that level. Yeah. All right.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for being with us. Lots of love, everyone.
Love and pleasure.